Whoopsie.
We accidentally invaded Mexico. That is basically what the Pentagon just admitted. That's right. U.S. military contractors rolled into a Mexican beach town, put up Department of Defense, not Department of War, restricted area signs, and treated Mexico, part of it, like it was U.S. territory. And of course, when Mexico decided to push back, the response was, whoops, our bad. You know what? You should be thanking us anyway, because we're out here fighting the drug war. What are you doing? You're welcome. Now look, I've spilled coffee on my shirt before. I've spilled water on my shirt before. That's an accident. You don't accidentally roll up into another country and start posting U.S. military signs. I guess unless you've spent years or decades training yourself to believe in magic words like cartels and fentanyl, and that they give you a free pass to do whatever the hell you want. Hey, you know who doesn't get to be confused about the border? The people with guns, drones, and a multi-$100 billion defense budget built on securing the border and fighting against the drug cartels. All right, so I want to talk about something serious, and that is the supposed magic spell that makes this kind of thing considered normal. The official story is always some sort of version of, oh, don't worry, we were conducting anti-drug operations, right? We were trying to interdict drug smugglers. We were just protecting Americans from cartels and from the scourge of fentanyl. Hey, you know, those things are bad and all, but this seems worse. And you know what else is worse? The war on drugs. It is the most successful branding campaign in the U.S. The U.S. national security state has ever run. Okay? Not because it stops drugs. It doesn't. But because it unlocks power, state power. At home, it justifies militarizing the police, mass surveillance, and mass incarceration abroad. It justifies cross-border raids, bases, and advisors crawling all over other countries. And it always works the same way. Say cartels, say fentanyls killing your kids. You show some scary B-roll of guys with guns and face masks, which, by the way, we have in American cities now. And then quietly add, so obviously we're going to need more military operations in Mexico and Colombia, Central America, all that stuff. Now, the only question we're allowed to ask is, well, okay, how aggressive should we be against that? Never, hey, should we be doing this at all? Do we have the right to do this at all? So now when contractors wander into Mexico and plant U.S. DOD, not Department of War signs, on a Mexican beach, they're not really acting rogue, okay? They're basically enacting the logic that they've been marinating in for about 50 years of drug war propaganda. If it's about drugs, then we don't have to follow any rules. So let me just do a little speed run of how we got here. In the 1970s and 80s, the drug war gets sold as a domestic crime issue. We got to get tough. We got to crack down. We got to lock them up. Then it goes international. For example, you plan a Colombia Meridia initiative with Mexico, with the DEA and the U.S. military advisors going to help Latin American governments fight the cartels. Now, on paper, it looks like cooperation. But in practice, it's actually different. So you end up sending billions of dollars to security forces. You get U.S. agencies all over foreign territory. You've got training, weapons, shared intel, and over time, this quiet little assumption of, we can cross a few lines because they need us. They need us. Now, what did we get for decades of allowing this to happen? Well, drugs are still here. Fentanyl is here. The cartels are still wealthy. You also get regular people in Mexico that are stuck between corrupt local elites, cartels, and the U.S. militarization. But the one thing that does get stronger? Well, the idea that the drug war is a permanent exception clause to other nations' sovereignty. So yeah, by the time some Pentagon-backed contractors stroll over the line and slap restricted area signs up, it barely even registers to them that they're crossing a line. They've been told their whole careers that there are no lines if you say the word narcos and national security. And this is where both parties kind of cooked, all right? Now, Republicans say the quiet part out loud. Send the troops, we got to bomb the cartels, which is what Trump's literally doing. And not just the cartels, actually, bombing people in boats. We don't know if they're drug boats. That's what the Trump administration is doing right now. Designate them terrorists so we can go full war on terror 2.0 in Mexico. This is basically an invasion. Okay, they're not shy about wanting to invade other countries. Now, Democrats, not letting them off the hook either. They frame it a lot more nicer. Like, oh, we should work with our allies in Mexico to combat transnational criminal organizations. We need to give our agencies the tools they need to fight against fentanyl. And we must secure our border while respecting human rights. Okay, when you strip all the flowery language away, they still agree on one core thing. That the war on drugs justifies decades of expanded U.S. security power everywhere. So the Republican base gets the red meat fantasy of Marines charging across the Rio Grande. The liberal base gets smart, targeted, evidence-based security assistance. And in the middle of that Venn diagram, you have contractors literally invading a Mexican beach and acting shocked that anybody seems to have a problem with it. And this isn't just a clown story about people who can't seem to read a map. Now, the bigger danger here is normalization. Every new exception becomes the rule. One accidental incursion, one extra legal raid, one temporary base. And suddenly the expectation is that the U.S. can be there, just be there wherever it wants, okay, whenever it wants, and stay for as long as it wants to, okay, as long as it says, oh, drugs. This erases democracy on both sides of the border. Mexicans don't really get to decide what kind of security state they live under because Washington's money and missions are always kind of hovering in the background. Americans don't get to vote on whether we're essentially running pieces of Mexico as an informal military zone because it's all done under classified or technical cooperation language. It creates permanent crisis politics. Look, if the drug war ever worked, then the justification for it would go away. So it's designed not to work, just to manage and stabilize and control so that the funding and the missions never really stop. So when you see the, oops, we invaded Mexico, our bad, border confusing, understand that's not a glitch in the drug war. That is the drug war. So to wrap it up, U.S. contractors backed by the Pentagon crossed into Mexico. They planted Department of Defense restricted area signs on Mexican soil. Mexico rips them down, says, no, this is actually our land, and they would be correct. And the U.S. says, oh, don't worry, we're just fighting the drug war. You like safe children, don't you? This is a great example of how the war on drugs has turned into a blank check, not only for police at home, but for military contractors abroad and for politicians in both parties who want to look tough rather than admit that their entire strategy on drugs has failed for the last 50 years. This is not about protecting people from drugs. It is about protecting an empire from any accountability. If this video helped you cut through the BS and see what is really happening, then smash that like button. Every single like pushes back against the right-wing propaganda machine. I can't do this work without your support. So please check out my Patreon. Link is in the description of this video. For a few bucks a month, you can help keep this channel independent from corporate BS. So hit subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let's keep fighting for democracy and against fascism together.